There's a lot of concern in the health community I work in about the EU-US trade negotiations towards the trade agreement. Can you tell me how much of a threat you think that poses to our NHS?
It's funny you should ask this question actually. I'm actually currently studying for a postgraduate diploma in public health and I've got exams next week. And I'm actually involved with a public health network across the UK. And the trade agreement has actually come up and it's something that we are caucusing almost to fight against. I think it's a huge, huge threat to the NHS because it's going to bring, it's privatisation through the back door with the availability of US companies to come in and start profit making within our NHS. And I've already spoken out against NHS privatisation. I totally oppose the Health and Social Care Act of 2012 and I'll continue doing that. But I think that we as a nation need to unite against it because what worries me is this is something that's sort of starting to creep through. There's already problems in the NHS because of the top-down new organisation that has occurred. And this is actually just adding fuel to the fire. And I will pledge that even if not elected to the European Parliament, the fight for the NHS will stay because actually that is something really dear to me and I'm sure it's dear to everybody else in here as well.
Recent and the one before
Name and CLP.
Sorry, Dave Harris, Colchester CLP. Do apologise. The trend of late has been for turnout in elections to go down. I'm really concerned about that trend accelerating with the European elections coming on, and I wonder what the candidates all can think about doing nationally, what we can do about that, and how we can polarise that into a bit higher turnout here.
Just to focus a little bit more as well on how we could potentially increase turnout in elections, is firstly I think we also need to galvanise our membership because without the activists to go out there and knock on doors, deliver leaflets, canvass, telephone canvass, talk to their friends, you know, those sorts of things, that's the way to actually get people interested in politics. And once we've started doing that, and that's something that I would really encourage working with local CLPs to do that, go out with them, canvass with them, done that. It's then actually answering people's real concerns, because I think in the past, what we've done, and I think that was a big mistake that we made at the last general election, is that we fudged on the main issue that bothers everybody, and it's the elephant in the room often, it's immigration. And we have to allow, you know, we have to listen to them, we have to give them some credible reasons to why they should be voting Labour. Because at the moment, it seems that it's the right, UKIP, the Tories, that have got people's ears, and a lot of what they're spouting is totally wrong. And I think we have to have that conversation with them. Once we've had that engagement, I think we also have to remember that yes, whilst we have to fight for next year's election in Europe, it is going to be the springboard for the 2015 general election, and it is a given. If we do not win seats in the East of England, we will not go back to Westminster. And actually, so I see that I've got a double duty next year. I've got to win for Labour in the East of England for Europe, but I also actually owe it to the 6 million people in the East of England to make sure that we get a Labour government back in 2015, because otherwise this country is in big trouble.
I wondered in terms of, with the agenda of previous Labour governments, did a few little snippets around the age, but workers' rights are now being attacked even more. TUPE, age work regulations are a joke, tax on redundancy protection and protection for fixed-term contractors. I wonder what your view on the direction Europe should go in terms of protecting workers' rights, because we're the people who are paying the tax and national insurance. It isn't the top 1% with all the wealth funding all the services that are now being attacked. I wonder what your views on that were.
I am actually a member of both Unite and community trade unions, and working in the private sector, that's especially challenging. But I have fought and got to help people get their jobs back in an industry which is even worse than some of the things the public sector is doing. And I actually think that Europe has a very strong role in how it can actually help workers' rights. It's already delivered in things like the Working Time Directive, etc. And I'm actually fighting, one of the reasons I'm passionate about staying in Europe for us is actually the protections that it does bring us, things like statutory holidays, not having to work at all. But I think one of the other things that we do need to fight as well at the same time, making me very, very concerned, is how multinational companies based here in the east of England, for example, Tesco's in Harlow, is shutting down their distribution points and then, getting rid of the UK workers and bringing in agency workers from Poland, for example, and not giving them the same workers' rights. And I think those are the sorts of things that actually Europe needs to tighten on, so everybody gets paid a minimum wage, everybody has the same rights. Because, it shouldn't matter whether you're in the UK or in another country in Europe. We should all, because in the end, without workers, you cannot build an economy at all. And that is the thing that I need to be protecting. So I think Europe has a much stronger role to play, especially now when we have a Tory government who is hell-bent on cutting public services and actually smashing up the private sector as well. So loads of people losing jobs at the moment.
Yeah, Karen Finnegan, Colchester Labour Party. I'd like to ask the candidates what their view is on the referendum. The nature of what Labour should have in terms of its kind of view of the referendum coming to the table. Should it be pro, should it be against? The nature of how that's actually played out on the doorstep. If we're the only party that is, arguing no referendum, we have to be very clear why and what the argument is. So if you're on the doorstep, what are the candidates' views on that?
When we talk about a referendum, what I personally actually think before we even go to the yes or no answer is to actually think about what is fueling this call for a referendum. And interestingly, Ipsos Mori did a poll in April which looked at the various issues that were important to the British electorate. And out of the 25 things that they were polled on, Europe came at sort of number 12, the European referendum. The actual, and I've already touched on this, I think the actual problem that when people think about Europe and referendums, they are talking about immigration and the effect that has on the economy. So it is about, and when people think about immigration, they think all these people coming in, they take our jobs, they take our housing, our economy won't grow. They're the things I think we, as a Labour Party, and as everybody in the Labour Party, not just MEPs, not just MPs, everybody, they're the things that we're going to need to address. In terms of whether I think there should be a referendum, I personally think that actually, no, because I think there's other things that need to be sorted out, and actually we have to be quite careful as well that if, we are hoping for a 2015 general election victory. If we were to promise an election there is a referendum and Britain votes no for whatever reason, there is a huge risk that it will be Ed Miliband will be remembered as the Prime Minister that took us out of Europe. And I am totally against coming out of Europe because of the good it does. And being an internationalist, my parents were born abroad as well, I think that we are a stronger community and country and Europe for the diversity that we can bring. So no, but I think we need to look at other things first.
I'm hoping someone, just to prove to the candidates that there are other CLPs representing, I'm hoping somebody from one of the other CLPs is going to ask a question. Go right to the back.
Yep, Edward Carlton Brown, Cambridge CLP. What they have done, or what they would do, is I'm to engage with voters and members there, and to try to put that I'm a Labour presence on the ground in those areas.
I've already talked about what I have actually done in those challenging cases where there isn't a Labour vote. If I tell you that I actually currently live in North Hertfordshire, where you could put a blue rosette and a donkey and they'd elect it, but I'm actually, every time a European election comes up, I get excited because I know that I can vote Labour and my Labour vote will count. And in the past, when I actually chose to stand in for the general election in 2007, I was committed to that for the pure reason that I actually believe that everybody, regardless of where you live, should actually have the right to vote for a Labour candidate, because so often, it's taking baby steps. We have to start very small to actually galvanise more support for us. So I believe that nowhere is a no-go area, and if invited, I've already been out on doorsteps across the region, not just, in key seats. I'm happy to go out with people, engage with people in the community, to get the vote out, because actually in the European elections, every single Labour vote is going to count. The only way we are going to win at least 2 MEPs, hopefully, hopefully 3, is to get a whole vote out across the region. So actually, the strategy for this election coming up is totally different to what will happen for the general election in 2015.
Anne Evander, Harrington, North East Essex, CLP. I'd like to ask a question. We're all talking about issues, etc., but let's say that you're successful and you go off to Europe. How do you see your role as a European parliamentarian, working with sister parties and functioning as a European parliamentary member?
Thank you, Anne.
I'm not actually going to declare a specialism, because actually as a newly elected MEP, it's going to be a huge learning curve, and I'm not actually saying that this is, I'm going in as an expert. There's going to be a lot to learn, and I don't think anybody is a perfect politician or parliamentarian. But how do I see my role as a parliamentarian with sister parties? Initially, it's going to be about building relationships with them. We're going to have to learn to negotiate, because there are, we've got to understand cultural differences as well. We are the Labour Party from the UK. We are going to have to work with our sister parties in Europe, and they've all got different wants and needs. Policy making in Europe is quite complex as well, so we have to negotiate our way through that, and we have to come to agreements and compromise, and that's where I see my role, which is compromising with our sister parties in Europe to get the best deal for the Labour Party and for all the population of the east of England. That's how I think I should be working in Europe.
It's a question about money. What would you and other Labour Euro MPs do to persuade the big international firms to pay the right amount of taxes, whatever that might be?
I think Europe is actually key to this, because some of these offshore companies that some of the big multinationals are going through, conveniently located in Luxembourg, in Spain. So, I agree with Alex there, actually, that we do need more Labour representation to actually start pushing some of these things through. And we are actually starting to make changes in terms of how the financial system, for example, was it only a few weeks ago that the European Parliament actually voted for a cap and bank of bonuses, and actually if Europe can lead the way in that, that's actually going to have an impact here as well. And in terms of, tax havens and things like that, I just think that, we just need to ban them, because it is actually not fair. It just isn't fair, and people shouldn't be allowed to hide their money away. And, and that's actually then working with the likes of places like Switzerland that are very, very closed off.
Jordan. Okay, well I'm going to finish with a kind of Jeremy Kyle style question to liven things up a little bit. So we've heard a lot about the conflicting, we could say, commitments that you'll have upon yourselves as MEPs in Brussels, across the region, and representing the Labour Party wider. Now, all of us in this room who do things for the Labour Party, we're all volunteers, and we're managing our working lives and our families and our Labour Party commitments, sometimes the latter being the biggest commitment of all. So how are you going to ensure a good balance and a work-life balance with all of that, and satisfying all of us as well?
That's a very good question.
I think I've already managed a very good work-life balance, actually. Over the last 10 years I've been working full-time, non-stop, but at the same time I have shown dedication and passion and commitment to the Labour Party. And on top of that, I've taken on extra academic activities. I'm very, very close to my family who live 200 miles away from here. I see them, I see my friends, and I actually believe that if I become an MEP, nothing really has to change. And the reason why I think nothing is going to change for me is because I think it's really important for the electorate to be able to actually connect with its politicians. There is a lot of, people moan and say, politicians are out of touch. And I believe that having a good work-life balance and still being interested in what's going on out there means that I can connect with my electorate and represent them fairly in Europe.
Thank you very much, Bhavna.